For me personally, there's different reasons why I've tried to understand anatomy in a more detailed way. So one is when you start yoga and then you start to teach, you understand your body to a certain level, but to understand other people's bodies is really hard. So when you study anatomy, I feel like it helps me understand a little bit, maybe more, what is happening in the yoga student's body. And then it also I feel like it kind of keeps me centered, because in the Ashtanga yoga world, at least, we can do some pretty intense yoga poses. Whether they're intense because of the strength, or intense because of the flexibility, or intense because we just do so many in a row, right? We do very long practices. And so when I understand the anatomy, it helps me be more realistic. Like, okay, should I really do this pose? Should I take it to the next level, for instance? Or if I want to take it to the next level because it's thrilling, it's fascinating, it's fun, it's one thing. But if I'm going to take it to the next level, pretending that it is therapeutic, that it's good for my body, that's another thing. It helps us to adapt the poses to what should be happening in the body when you understand the functional anatomy of the body. It helps us to avoid injury. It helps us understand the poses on a much more subtle level. And it helps us find how to use our energy in a more efficient way. And then I also think it's pretty fun. It's pretty interesting. These two cavities that are divided by the respiratory diaphragm, the diaphragm around here. So this diaphragm, it's dome-shaped, like you see there, and the fibers are working in those directions of the arrows. And then it all comes and it attaches on itself. Most muscles, they attach to one, they start at one bone and they go to another bone. But the diaphragm, it's all along the rib cage. As you can see, it's on the spine, it's all along here. And then the fibers come in and they all attach together for this thing that they call the central tendon. It's like a fibrous place. So it's fibrous means it doesn't have as much elasticity as the muscle part, and so it attaches within itself, the diaphragm. So when we're breathing, the diaphragm is kind of like this, right? My fingers. So everybody understands that a contraction of a muscle means that the insertion and the origins come close together, right? So there's central tendons at the top, and then we've got all the origins all around here. Okay, so when the muscle fibers contract, they get closer together, right? So when my diaphragm contracts, two things can happen, or even at the same time. So if it contracts, usually it's going to go down a little bit because it's getting shorter. When it goes down a little bit, it's making space, for the air to come into the body. Does that make sense? So I've got my diaphragm up here, and I contract my diaphragm, it goes down a little bit, it makes space, and the air comes in and fills that space up. Okay? Then the diaphragm releases, the lungs automatically release, and the air goes out of the body. so now we've just seen that the spinous processes are kind of limiting the extension of the spine, the back bending of the spine, the opening of the heart center. So we learn why we do this because of all those reasons I just said, right? But at some point, right, everything good for you can also become very bad for you, right? At some point, enough is enough. It becomes too much. And then you're going to have other kinds of problems. Right? We don't want to go into the place where it's destabilizing you. And if you have scoliosis, again, it's not a topic we're going to talk a lot about, but if you have scoliosis, let's say you have some thoracic curve, then rotation, when you go back, you're going to have the spinous processes be able to go further because they're not lined up, right? So if I've got a curve in these curve way more than usual. If I've got some curve happening here and then I go into extension, they're going to be able to move more than if they're lined up perfectly. Okay. And then if you start doing things like this, overdoing it, there's these. Here, they're called the facet joints. Can you see these flat things here? So let's find some facet joints in my C5, C6. Okay, so these go together like that. But you see there's a little space here. Even when the bodies are stuck together, there's still a space. But generally in a live body, there's going to be a little bit more space there. And so these are synovial joints. They have synovial fluid in there, and that means they've got that slipperiness to be able to glide on one another easily. Now imagine if I'm doing deeper back bends or twisting or anything that is going to grind those joints, like any joint, like your knee, your shoulder, anywhere in the body. If you go to the place where so let's say you've got some disc damage, so they're a little closer, and then you still haven't learned your lesson, and you just keep grinding a little further, slowly, you can injure these facet joints. So if you're hypermobile, for instance, and you haven't built the muscles to contain your joints, and you're constantly working to your body's maximum mobility, then eventually, you're going to go into places that aren't so healthy just to get your great, asana. So then that starts to rub. So let's say now we've got some twisting happening and we're doing deep positions in a way that is adding to the extra rub. You're just going to grind them away a little bit quicker. The more I learn about anatomy, the more I'm like, I used to think that I was being so flexible and I was so proud of my flexibility that it was almost like somehow curse and, like everything is like that, right? Like every gift you've been given can also have a negative side. So if you have a gift, you want to not abuse your gifts. Right? So if you've got the gift of flexibility, then you don't want to abuse it, because if you abuse it, it becomes not such a gift anymore.